There is a promise in the name of this video, and before we go one step further, I mean to set it straight. No single meal resets your gut, not one plate, not one supper, no matter the label. But the truth sitting underneath that promise surprised even me, and it runs nearly as striking. The little living world inside you answers fast. Researchers who fed people a different way watched the makeup of the gut begin to shift inside about a single day. One meal is where you start, the change is real, and it is quick. Mind the catch, though, for the catch is the heart of this. That quick change only holds if you keep it up. Eat the new way for a stretch, then drift back to the old way, and the inner world drifts right back along with you. It is a garden you tend, not a switch you throw once and forget about. And a garden is a thing I know a little something about. My name is Noah Yoder. I farm a piece of ground here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the same ground my grandfather cleared, in a farmhouse he raised with his own two hands. My wife Ruth keeps the kitchen and about half the good sense in this house. I am a farmer, not a doctor, and I will say that plainly more than once before we are through, because it matters more than anything else I tell you. What I know from soil and seed and a long life of plain eating at a plain table. So I will tell you about the world under your own skin, the only way I am fit to, which is plainly the way a man explains a garden to a neighbor leaning on the fence. Along the inside of you, down the long, dark road of your gut, there lives a world of tiny living things. More of them than you could count in a lifetime of trying to count. When a man first hears that, his skin crawls a bit. He thinks of sickness, of something gone wrong, of creatures where creatures ought not to be. Set that fear down gently and leave it there. These are not a sickness in you. These are your partners, and their kind has been riding along with our kind since long before our kind had a name for anything at all. They earn their board, too. They help you pull the good out of your food, the nourishment your own body would otherwise walk right past and lose. A few things your body cannot make for itself, they make and hand over free. They crowd the bad sorts out, the way a thick, healthy stand of grass crowds out the weeds, so there is no bare ground left for trouble to take root in, and they help keep the wall of your gut sound. So when you sit down to your supper of an evening, understand this. You are not eating for one. You are feeding yourself, and you are feeding every last one of them down there at the same table. Two plain aims run underneath everything I am going to tell you tonight. You want more kinds of them, a wider spread of different helpers, and you want more of the good ones among that spread. Carry those two aims in your pocket. Everything else in this matter is only the how. What do these countless helpers live on? They live on the rough of plant food, the stringy, coarse, homely part, the part of a plant that you yourself cannot break down and use, try as your body might. When you eat an apple off the tree or a bowl of beans or a good mess of cooked greens, some of that food your own body takes apart and burns for its own needs. But the rough goes sailing on past all of that, traveling the length of you, down and down to where the helpers are waiting. And that rough, the part you could make no use of, is their supper laid on the table. It is the one thing that keeps them fed and keeps them many. Then comes the part that ought to make you sit up straight in your chair. When those helpers eat that rough, they do not merely feed themselves and leave it there. They make something out of it. They take that plain, coarse fiber and they turn it into small, quiet things that travel back up to that gut wall and feed it, and strengthen it, and calm the low fires the body keeps banked and smoldering in there. I will not hand you the hard chemical names for those small things, because a hard name would not help you eat one bite better tomorrow. I will tell you the effect instead, which is what a person needs. The cells of that gut wall take a great share of their daily bread from what the helpers cook up out of the rough. Feed the helpers, and they turn right around and feed the wall that holds you together. A long run of good comes back around to you from one plain forkful of the coarse stuff. Feed them, and in the end, they feed you. That is the bargain, and it is an honest one. You may well have heard a frightening version of all this somewhere, the kind of thing that gets shouted at a body online. The claim goes that if you starve those gut bugs, they turn around and eat your own gut lining right out from under you. And I have to be square with you here, the way I try to be square even when the plain truth is a good deal less exciting than the tall tale spun around it. That frightening claim is not made up out of thin air. There is a real thing sitting underneath it, and it is worth knowing. In careful studies done with animals, not with people, but with animals, researchers took the fiber, took the rough clean out of the diet. And when the little helpers ran short of their proper food, they did what any hungry thing does. They turned to the next thing within reach. The gut is lined with a soft protective layer, a sort of mucus coat that lies between all that living activity and the tender wall itself. Starved of the rough they were built to eat, the microbes began feeding on that protective coat instead, and it wore thinner under them, and the animal was left more open to trouble slipping through where trouble had no business going. That is a real finding, and a sobering one, and it is about the strongest plain reason I can offer you for why the rough earns its keep at your table. But I will trim that tale down to its true size, even knowing the bigger version would frighten you into agreeing with me a good deal faster. That was shown in animals. It points at a mechanism, at the way the thing works when it works. It is not a promise that your own gut wall is being gnawed down to nothing tonight because you had white bread with your supper. And mind this too, in fairness, it took a steady, grinding shortage of the rough to do that harm in those animals. A diet kept short of fiber right along, or short of it off and on, and not one careless day here or there. Take it as a lesson about why fiber deserves its place on your plate, and not as a fright to lie awake over. Honesty is worth more to you than a scare, and I would rather keep your trust than win the argument cheap. How does a person feed that inner world well then? The first pillar is the simplest thing in all the world to say, and the easiest thing under heaven to shrug off and forget. Variety. You want to eat many different kinds of plants across the run of a week, and not just the same 3 or 4 of them on a tired loop. There was a study, the largest one of its kind ever gathered up, that went looking into the guts of more than 10,000 people from all over the wide world. And what they turned up comes down to a plain line you can carry with you. The folks who ate 30 or more different kinds of plants in a week had a richer, more varied inner world down below than the folks who were eating fewer than 10 different kinds. More sorts of plant going in the top, more sorts of helper thriving down at the bottom. It follows the same bargain we already talked through. The reason is plain once you see it. Different helpers eat different things. The bean feeds one sort, the leaf feeds another, and the root, the seed, and the berry each suit a different mouth down there in the dark. So the wider you cast your net at the table, the more kinds of them you keep alive and working for you. Narrow your eating down to the same few comfortable things, week on week, and you feed the same few helpers over and over, while all the rest go hungry and thin themselves out to nothing. I want to be straight with you about that number, 30, because I have watched it get waved around like a commandment carved in stone, and it is no such thing. It is a rough aim, a direction to walk toward, and not a fence to measure your own worth against. The sharpest part of that 30 against 10 line even came from a smaller handful of those many thousands of people, so do not go treating it as iron law handed down from on high. Walk toward wide. That is all there is to it, and it is far easier than the number makes it sound, because near everything counts toward your total. The roots and the leaves count, the seeds and the beans count, and so do the fruits, the whole grains, the herbs growing in the pot on your windowsill, a scatter of nuts in the morning, and the different colors of vegetable on the plate. Even the coffee and the tea a body drinks count toward that spread, for they come off plants too. A pot of chili, with its beans and its onion and pepper and cumin and tomato, might hand you 6 or 7 different kinds in the one bowl, and you never once broke a sweat over it. Every single different one you add is another kind of helper fed and kept. You are not chasing a score. You are just widening the table. If this plain way of talking sits right with you, go on and subscribe, and I will keep bringing you the honest, low-cost version of what usually gets hollered at folks with a price tag attached. That is all I will ask of you. Let us go on to the second pillar, because this one carries a twist that most of the loud videos skip right past. The second pillar is the old living ferments, and this is where I get to tell you something worth the sitting through. The ferments are foods that have been left to sour and to come alive under salt, or under their own good cultures, given a little time and no heat to kill them. Real raw sauerkraut, the kind still crisp and sharp from the crock-down cellar. The soured milks like your buttermilk and your kefir, and plain live yogurt with the cultures still living in it. The old salt pickles, too, soured slow in their brine, and not the quick kind flashed in vinegar. These foods carry living helpers right down into you, fresh hands arriving to join the crew already at work in the field. And the twist is worth the price of admission. In a careful study that ran 10 weeks long, researchers put one group of people on more of these fermented foods and put another group on plenty of fiber, the good rough we have been praising all along. You would guess the fiber group would pull out ahead on variety, and I will admit I would have guessed the same thing in myself, but it was the fermented food group that grew the more varied inner world and that showed fewer of the signs a body gives off when those low fires are burning too hot. And the fiber group, over that same short stretch of 10 weeks, did not much move their variety at all. Do not hear me wrong on that. It does not mean the rough does not matter, for it surely does, and over a longer road the fiber does its deep and patient work that no ferment can do in its place. It only means the living ferments carried a clear, measured win for variety in the short time they were given to prove it. So you want the both of them at your table, working together. But do not let anybody talk you into thinking the kraut is only a garnish on the side of the plate. It is doing real and honest labor in there, and you need not drown yourself in the stuff to get the good of it. In that same study, the bigger the daily helping a person ate, the stronger the effect the researchers could measure. A little of it every day beats a great heap of it once in a blue moon. There is one plain thing you must mind, though, or it all comes to nothing. It has to be the living kind, kept cold in the cooler, still saying the word raw or the word live, somewhere on it. The kraut and the pickles that sit warm and content on a middle shelf, shelf-stable, cooked and sealed up to last for years on end, have had the life boiled clean out of them in the making. They may taste near the same going down, but the life was the point of the exercise, and in those warm sealed jars the life is gone. So when you go looking at the store, look in the cold case along the wall and read the label for that word, live. Turn the matter over now and see the other side of it, and the picture gets plain in a hurry. The soft, refined, made food. That white flour with the rough milled and sifted clean out of it. That sugar, stripped down to nothing left but the sweet. All those smooth processed things engineered to slide down a throat easy, with none of the coarse stuff left anywhere in them. That food will feed you after a fashion. It will fill your belly and quiet your hunger for a spell, and there is a comfort in it. I will not pretend otherwise. But it sends nothing at all on down to the helpers, because the one thing they eat, the rough, was pulled out of it back in the making before it ever reached your hand. The milling that turns wheat into fine white flour does its work by stripping off the bran and the germ, which is only to say by stripping off the same rough the helpers were waiting downstream to be fed. A table built mostly on that soft-made food does a quiet, slow sort of harm that a person never feels happening. It fills the man up while it starves the world living inside the man. There is no ache to warn him. There is no alarm bell that rings. The plate looks full and the fellow feels fed and satisfied. But down below, the helpers are going hungry and thinning out, kind by kind, week by quiet week. And the fix is the same plain old instruction your own great-grandmother could have given you across her kitchen table without a single day of schooling in it. Less of the soft-made food, more of the rough, real plant food, and shifted over gently, week by week, and not all torn up and thrown out in one dramatic day. You are tending a garden, remember? Not fighting a war. A man does not tend a garden by setting fire to it and starting fresh. He tends it by feeding it, steady and patient, season on season on season. What stops me every time I turn this over in my mind is that the old folks did every last piece of it, all of it, and they did it blind, without the faintest notion in their heads that there was any world down there at all to be feeding. My grandmother never once heard the fancy word the scientists now use for that inner world. She could not have told you that a single helper lived inside her. Not to say to have her, but consider how she ate and how her own mother ate before her, back down the line. A wide spread of whatever the garden and the season happened to hand up that week, a little of this and a little of that, and the spread changing along steady with the turning of the months. Nothing refined, because there was no factory anywhere near to refine it, so the ruth was always right there in the food where it was meant to be, and the ferments carried her clear through every winter. The kraut working away in its crock down in the cool of the cellar. Soured milk put up careful to see the household through to spring. Pickles resting in their brine. Root vegetables banked in sand. And the patient economy of a farm kitchen that wasted not one thing. Every single thing these bright new studies now stand up and urge upon us. My grandmother did without thinking twice, without one shred of science to lean on, simply because that was how a person ate when a person ate from the land they stood on. The knowing was never truly knowing to her at all. It was only living. And somewhere along the road, we set that living down in the dirt and walked off from it and clean forgot it. These days, we are buying it back at a fine, steep price, dressed up in brand new words and calling it a grand discovery. But it is no discovery. It is her table and her mother's table before her, and it was always only her table. Why then does this business feel so tangled and so dear if the truth of it is this plain and this old? Every store shelf groans under pills and powders, all of them promising to hand you your gut back for a fee. The honest answer has no villain standing in it, and I want to be careful right there because it would be easy and cheap of me to point at some scheming fellow behind a curtain and let you hiss at him. There is no such fellow. The trouble is simpler and quieter and sadder than a scheme. The real truth costs almost nothing, and a body half knows it already, down in its bones. That is the sum of the medicine. But a truth that plain, and that cheap, sells nothing. And there lies the rub. There is no money to be made in a spoonful of kraut from a crock. So the plain truth gets taken and dressed up in hard, clever words and turned into things that a man can put a price on and sell to you. Pills full of helpers at a fine price, when a fortful of that cold, live kraut does as much or more and costs you a few pennies. Powders in a tub to stir into your water of a morning. Special foods with the good words stamped bold and bright across the box. Even tests of your own insides, sold to you so that something else can then be turned around and sold to fix whatever the test says it found in there. No scheme runs any of it. No villain pulls a lever. The money rolls downhill toward the pill and the powder and away from the plain plate the way water rolls downhill, and not one single person has to stand there and push it along. That is only the shape of the ground we are all walking on. I will be fair about the pills, mind, because fair is the only honest way I know how to talk about anything. Most of those bought helpers, The probiotics rest on thin and uneven ground when you go looking hard at the evidence for them. What works tends to be a matter of one particular strain, in one particular case, and the shelf at the store gives a plain person no earthly way to tell which is which. Meanwhile, the plain fermented food has real, measured good sitting solid behind it. I am not standing here telling you a bottle can never once help a living soul because that would not be fair either. What I am telling you is that between the bottle and the plate is the honest buy. The plate, near about every time. Before we finish up, I need to lay down one plain and serious word, and I need you to hear it every bit as clearly as anything else I have said tonight. Everything I have talked over with you tonight is plain. Everyday eating, that is all of what it is. It is not a treatment for anything. It is not a cure for whatever might ail a person. What it is the ordinary, sensible, old way that a body feeds the life kept inside it. Real and lasting trouble in the gut is a wholly different matter, and it belongs in different and better hands than an old farmer's. Lasting pain that will not let go and let up. Blood, where blood has plainly no business being, or a lasting change in the way your body goes about its work. That is a doctor's ground and not a farmer's, and no food from any table anywhere on this earth stands in the place of a good doctor looking you over proper. If something like that is going on inside you, go and see one, and do not let me, nor any video, nor any voice at all coming out of a screen, stand for 1 minute between you and that visit. Go. And if you are already under a doctor's care, or taking something a doctor has given you, then carry everything I have said here straight to that doctor first, to the one who truly knows your own case and your own body, before you go changing a single thing on your own. Once more, and plain, for I meant it the first time and mean it yet. I am a farmer. I am not a doctor. Soil and seed and the plain old way of eating from the land, that is the honest fence line of everything I know. The one small thing to carry out of here with you costs you nothing at all, and it is yours to begin whenever you please. Turn your eyes down to what is sitting there on your plate, and ask yourself one plain, quiet question. Am I feeding only myself here tonight? Or am I feeding the world living inside me too? Then 2 small moves, and no more asked of you than that. First, widen the plants. Add on a couple of kinds you do not usually reach for, and keep right on widening a little more each week, month after month, until your eating is broad and varied, without you even having to think about it anymore. And second, add one living fermented thing to your day, most days. A forkful of cold, live kraut, a glass of kefir, or a little dish of real soured pickle from the cold case. And that is the size of it. That is the Amish habit, if you care to call it by that name, though the honest truth is it is only the old habit, the one that never should have been set down in the first place. It will not reset your gut in one meal, for nothing under the sun does. But start it at your next meal. Then keep it up, and you will feed that inner world the same way your own great-grandparents fed theirs, without any of them ever once knowing they were doing it. That is the whole of it, and it does more for you than any bottle ever sold off any store shelf. Ruth has supper about ready in the kitchen, so I will leave you there to think it over. If this plain talk was worth your evening, subscribe and come and join me again next time. Eat wide, my friend. Keep a little something living on your plate, and be well.